How you doing? So this is a little bit different. I've started a new podcast with Britt Pierce. It's called The Movement Podcast, where we get to talk about geeky watch stuff in more depth and with opposing opinions. You can watch the podcast with adverts here on YouTube, just over on our The Movement Podcast channel. You can also listen to the podcast as an audio and watch the podcast ad-free over on our Substack, where you can also support us, and that's how we're able to actually make this content. We want to keep this content essentially ad-free from the watch industry, so it's unbiased, it's unfiltered content. But if you want to watch it on YouTube, then there will be adverts. Anyway, I've got half an episode for you guys here, and if you want to see the rest of the episode, then you can check it out over on our channel and on our Substack. Everything will be in the description down below, but enjoy the episode. I hope you enjoy the episode, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Welcome to the Movement Podcast. I am Adrian, and I am here with Britt Pierce.
Hello. Hopefully my microphone's fixed and working this time as well.
Yeah.
For anyone who listened to episode 1, I'm so sorry for my audio. Something went wrong, but I think we worked it out. And this should sound buttery and smooth and so good.
And if it doesn't, we'll keep that in, because then it will just add to the awkwardness of the fact that it isn't sorted out. Right. What's been happening in the world of Brit? What's been going on?
Oh, I feel like every time I talk to you about how I'm doing, it's negative, and it's still negative. Just stress, so much going on, toddler life. So for anyone who doesn't know me very well, I have a 13-month-old, just over a year old. He's walking, he's moving, he is a liability. So most of my day is just trying to keep George out of trouble, and then whatever's left over is overthinking watches and looking into all things in the world of watches.
And
what about you? How are you?
You sent me a voice note yesterday talking about the podcast, and George clearly wanted to get involved. What was going on?
He just noticed that exact moment wasn't about him, and it was very upsetting to him. So every time I'm like FaceTiming or trying to send a voice memo, George will just start making so much noise.
Oh, I thought he was trying to add. I thought he had some points to make about how to make the podcast better.
No, his watch knowledge so low. Just
News. I'm just busy making videos. I want to get outside. I've been saying this for absolutely ages, but I feel like I keep coming up with video ideas that don't lend themselves to going outside and recording. I used to go up mountains and record videos up there, and I feel like the problem is doing that with a watch as a watch review immediately makes it look like it's a paid for review. And so I kind of feel like I need to dumb down the production and thoughts that go into the video, so that it doesn't come across like it's a paid review, because it isn't a fucking paid review.
It's not dumbing it down. I think there's something really charming in lower production and getting out of the studio. I think when you get more kit and you're used to a certain production level, you feel like it always has to be that or higher. But
no,
actually,
I feel like doing it in the studio is dumbing it down rather than going outside.
I
agree, yeah,
see.
from a video perspective, yes, it is lower production, but it's low effort for me doing a video in the studio, because the camera's already set up. I have multiple tripods and I have multiple cameras, and I just decide where I want to sit and I press record and talk. So it's easy to do it. Whereas going out, it's hard, because you're having to walk and carry all the gear and find a good location, and then you get there and it's Scotland, so it starts raining by the time you've parked up. I did a video talking about the Tudor Black Bay 58, and I had to climb up the mountain. I think it was 4 times to get the one video done, because I'd climb up and then it would start raining. Or I'd climb up and I wouldn't be able to get everything done. Or I'd climb up and it was a weekend and the summit was just full of people. And so then you just have to abandon the idea. And so that it takes a long time. Whereas sitting in the studio, you just press record, the sound's done, everything's done, you just go.
See, this is exactly why I don't go out. So I don't, once you're used to controlled elements, when you go into uncontrolled elements, I always think, what does the audio sound like? Because it's very windy here, or the sun will pop in and out of clouds. So I think, oh, am I overexposed, underexposed?
Yeah.
Is it all blown out in the background? What does it look like?
Yeah, but I feel like that's the fun part is the fact that people can see that it's outside. And so if things are off a little bit, they just inherently accept it. They know it's going to be off. They know the light's going to be off or the sound's going to be off because it's outside. Whereas if it's indoors, then it needs to be perfect because they expect it to be perfect.
Mm.
But someone left a comment on one of my videos. I was talking about the watch industry, actually linking with this video. So today we're going to be talking about tariffs, the impact on the watch industry,
Yeah.
and our thoughts on could it be a good thing that bad, weak brands die, or should everyone survive? But someone left a video on someone left a comment on my video about the tariffs, saying, "Who cares if watch industry dies? There hasn't been any innovation for the past 100 years." That then led me down a rabbit hole of that's clearly bullshit. And so I started doing research into what are the innovations, and of course the watch industry is full of BS around who came up with the first whatever. And I've just gone down so many rabbit holes of history. I learned about the first NATO strap. Wasn't
Can
in
we
the.
say that? Are we going to get sued?
I can call it a NATO strap. I'm just not allowed to say that I sell NATO straps because I don't sell NATO straps.
The first fabric single pass.
So it was 1908 was when the first concept of the NATO strap obviously wasn't called a NATO strap because NATO wasn't created then. But the design was can be dated back to 1908 to a company called Pearson's. And so it was one of those moments of this is why I love my job is I get to research random shit and go down these deep rabbit holes of how these things came about. Don't know how I got onto that topic. What I've been up to.
Right?
Yeah,
Was that
making
when
videos.
people were kind of converting pocket watches to wristwatches? Like, was it like a part of that mechanism of,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, so that people wanted wrist-mounted watches, and so this was my research was who actually made the first wristwatch, and there's so much rubbish around people claiming, oh, it was us, and it isn't. But yeah, it dates back to that. You get a pocket watch, you rotate the dial, the movement, so it's got the crown at 90 degrees, and then you just weld on these wire lugs, and then they needed a strap that could just be fed through. And so it didn't have a military connection or requirement until the First World War, and that's how it became the thing. Pearson's. It was designed for the pocket watches that were turned into watches. Pearson's were the biggest strap maker in the UK. UK joined World War One, and they needed something for their watches, and they just inherently were the watch strap that was used. So it wasn't designed for the military; it was just already available. This single piece leather strap.
it was great when brands and things and places were just making things instead of
Yeah.
having to have some heritage thing, if that makes sense. Like
Yes.
they weren't worried about, are we the first ones doing this? Can we slap this as a heritage thing to sell products? Like I
Yeah.
just love that there was a time where people, places, and businesses were just making things. Even, all the old Rolexes, and you can go down a crazy rabbit trail of just even Submariner weirdo references and how horribly documented a lot of things were. And it was just because I think they were just making things. Like they weren't worried about
Yes.
documenting
Yeah.
everything. And was this actually the first of this or this? There is some instances where they did try to use it for marketing, like Mercedes Glites and, swimming across the channel and the oyster seal case. But most of it wasn't for marketing. They were just making things
Yeah.
and going with it.
And this is also kind of pre-marketing. It's like there's yeah, there were newspapers and all that, but this is kind of pre-brand. There wasn't a global brand, and so this was the start of all of that stuff. So no, I agree, and it kind of goes back to the first wristwatch. Guinness Book of Records claim that Patek Philippe made the first wristwatch. And then before that, it was not Cartier, it was Breguet
It was, it was Breguet. There's a
claim.
big kerfuffle over Patek or Breguet. Yeah.
But the first instance of a wristwatch being recorded is hundreds of years before that, in the 1500s. The
Oh,
Earl of Lancaster gave Queen Elizabeth I a wristwatch as a New Year's gift. And it was documented as an arm watch because it wasn't a pocket watch. He already had ring watches, and so this was a watch to go on the arm. And so then it goes down the whole debate of, well, what is a wristwatch? But yeah, the first documented wrist-mounted watch was from the 1500s,
whoa.
which predates fucking everything. And there's
Yeah.
no record of who made it. There's just a record of who gifted it to whom.
Oh,
So it's really
I
interesting.
love that. It's like a grand mystery. It's like the mystery. But yeah, once again, it was just who cares? An arm watch was made, and then all the historians will start getting into, well, what constitutes a wristwatch or an arm watch?
Yeah,
Who cares?
exactly.
Oh my gosh, let's just make some things. That's really fun.
Yeah, so I ended up going down all of these rabbit holes. And so I think this might be a video that I can actually go out and record in the mountains because it's going to be multiple little points of who made the first chronograph, who made the first dive watch, who made the first titanium watch, the first PVD watch, to kind of highlight the fact that, yes, there have been watch innovations of the past 100 years.
I already love this video. I already can't wait for this video.
Well, I wonder, maybe we should do it as a podcast episode and go down. Do you listen to Acquired podcast?
I've tried to. It's so long.
It is long.
It's
It is
such a
long.
time commitment.
Yeah.
It's like reading a very, very long book where you're like, I hope I can make it through, but I've listened to a few of the acquireds.
Yeah, I love their deep dives, and they kind of take it in turn to research different elements. So maybe we do something like that sometime. That we take it in turn to research first chronograph, first dive watch, first whatever.
I live. I would totally be up for that. That would be awesome.
I think we're quite fun. Right, should we talk about tariffs?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want to fill us in on what's happened?
Well, yeah, but by the time this comes out, we'll hardly be the first people talking about this or the most informed people talking about it. But hopefully we can put some kind of a spin on it. So, it'll be a few weeks ago by the time this is out. Switzerland was hit with some of the harshest US trade tariffs. I think it's one of the most severe in the industrial world, in the industrialized countries, of 39%. So US consumers who are buying watches and US businesses that are bringing watches in right now will have a 39% tariff to pay on the products that they're importing. Now, the 39% is on the wholesale price. It's not on the MSRP price. So say, for example, if Omega costs, for easy numbers, 1,000 pounds to make. That's not what they cost, but for easy numbers, if it costs $1,000 to make an Omega, it will now have a 390 pound dollar tariff to pay on it. It's a crazy number. It's crazy industry news. So even though we're not the first ones to talk about this, I think it's still worth talking about because it's massive industry news. Is there anything you would add to that?
Yeah, it is massive industry news. If we think when Rolex or Omega do their yearly price increase of 3% or of 4%, 5%, that makes the news. People talk about that.
Yeah.
So this 39% is absolutely wild. And you're right, it's on the wholesale price. And so that probably equates to something like a 15% price increase on the retail price. But that's still a massive price increase. That's suddenly a product for the consumer. When you're talking about a £10,000 watch or a £5,000 watch, you're talking about £1,000 increase on that product, which is a
Yeah.
huge amount of cash. I think what one of the big challenges is the bigger the brand, the less of an impact it's going to be, especially in this world of micro brands taking over. The micro brands are going to be the ones hit the most. Christopher Ward came out with saying that someone buying a Christopher Ward in America, they are going to have to pay that full 39%
Yeah.
price increase on the retail price, not the wholesale, because Christopher Ward don't do wholesale.
Oof.
They are
Oh
direct to
yeah.
consumer. And as are 99% of micro brands are direct to consumer. And that's how they're able to create a better quality product for a less price, is because they don't have to factor in that 40% of the price going to the retailer. They just sell it at the 40% less. So it's really going to hit the smaller brands more so than the bigger brands. But it's going to hit so many offshoots of it. The retailers are going to get hit. They're having to charge more, which is going to reduce. Customers aren't going to want to buy the products at the higher price. They're going to sit there. The customer's going to sit in America thinking, I'm going to wait this out. I'm not going to go buy my Submariner now or my Speedmaster, because I don't want to waste that 15%, that £600-700 price increase, because next month Trump might just remove the tariffs and
Yeah.
therefore I could save it. So I may as well wait that month or 2 months or 3 months to save that amount of cash. Or what might also happen is people jump across the border to Canada and buy their watches up there, which has a complete opposite impact of the tariffs.
Greatest
It's not,
nation on earth. Greatest nation
yeah,
on earth. They're going up north.
debatable. I am not patriotic in
No.
the slightest, so I'd quite happily agree. I enjoyed Banff very much. So yeah, and so they're then taking that, it's luxury tourism. They're then taking that money and spending it in Canada, making Canada wealthier, making those retailers happier, and the brands are still getting their sales in. But of course, that's limiting to, America's bloody massive, isn't it? And so it's limiting to those cities around the borders. So it's a very, very tricky situation. I saw lots of comments on my video of people saying that they're not going to lose sleep over Rolex dying or Omega dying. It's like, yeah, it's not about the brand. It's not about that brand dying for that brand being Rolex or Omega or whoever. It's that the industry around that brand. There's whole villages, whole towns based on watchmaking. You've been to Nomos. I know Nomos isn't in Switzerland, but that whole region, the name's just escaped me.
Glashütte.
Glashütte. Yeah, so that whole region's based around watchmaking, isn't it? And
That's
so
all it is. That's all it
exactly.
is. Yeah.
And so if that tariff was based on that region and suddenly those brands died, you'd have whole communities jobless. And
Yeah.
that's
Not
a
only
messed up
that.
situation.
Not only that, it just seems to be a misunderstanding on who's paying the tariff. So say
Yes.
Rolex isn't paying the 39%. It's going to be the retailers and authorized dealers who pay it. There's not a Rolex boutique importing it in the US. It's going to be a bunch of authorized dealers who are needing to import it, who is going to cost more. They're going to have to pass those costs along to the consumers. And then if consumers are doing, like you said, buying elsewhere or holding out, they're taking the hit. So everyone's losing. There's no one who's winning in this model.
The
It's
only
overall
person who's
horrible for the
winning
industry.
is Trump being able to turn around and say he's reduced the deficit. Because the tariff is simply a tax. The tariff is just another sales tax. It's a sales tax on foreign products. And so the only one winning is going to be Trump being able to reduce the deficit. America's in debt. He needs to reduce the debt. And this is one way of doing it without increasing income tax or domestic sales tax. It looks like, oh, we're supporting America by taxing foreign countries. You're not taxing foreign countries. You're taxing your own people. It's just a tax that Rolex could suck up the tax. Like they have the ability to say to their dealers, we'll import the goods, we'll pay the tariffs. They're not going to. These are corporations. These are things built to make money, and so they don't want to lose out on that amount of profit. And also, 39% is pretty much going to be a profit margin of all of the watches. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not only the micro brands that I think are going to take a big hit, but also the brands that aren't as strong as Rolex and Omega. So maybe Zenith, maybe, I think there are other brands that are in maybe trickier spots that will be worse off because of this.
Yeah. And you can see it when you go to Watches and Wonders. The brands like Panerai, brands who have absolutely massive booths. No one's in them. And I don't know anyone who owns a Panerai. Andrew McCutcheon, Time and Tide, he's been posting about his Panerai. Literally the only person I can think of who has a Panerai. And yet they have these huge booths, which no doubt costs hundreds of thousands, if not a million, to run that booth.
Mm.
These are going to be brands that someone like Richemont is looking at, thinking, oh, we're going to keep this alive because of heritage and they're doing well in this market, and the fashion might come round to oversized square dive watches. But when something like this tariff happens, how long are these big groups going to keep these dying brands around for? Zenith would be a really sad one to lose, but I could see it happening. People don't buy Zeniths. I think they're fucking lovely watches. I'd happily have a Zenith myself. And so that would be a sad one to lose. But I do feel like we are going to lose some. And then that
Yeah.
brings up the question, is that a bad thing?
Oh,
If these weak brands die, should the weak brands just survive for shits and giggles, or should we? There's a lot of watch brands out there. Should we whittle them down a bit?
this is a tricky one. It puts me in two minds instantly. And also say an example like Zenith, it's how much will a conglomerate eat up maybe some of the costs as well. So Zenith is under LVMH. How long will LVMH be okay with that if they start running into the red or if profits aren't as high as they want them to be? How long will they keep that going? Do we just have to outlive Trump? Like, how? I guess those would be things that they'd be asking as well. And it's an uncertainty that's just going to exist going forward. So we'll probably see more conglomerates needing to step in if it is heritage brands that want to be preserved for whatever reason. But also conglomerates, they're not charities. They usually, I think they're going to actually thrive during this time. So the conglomerate model as we know it today began in the 1980s of people like Bernard Arnault purchasing big luxury brand names, using that heritage name and the good feelings you feel when you hear Louis Vuitton or uh, I don't, the imagery it inspires to sell a lot of subpar products, to sell horrible sliders, to sell cotton t-shirts that can't be that much better than a 40-pound cotton t-shirt. I just don't believe it. I wonder if conglomerates will actually thrive during this time, buying up more heritage brands and waiting it out.
Yeah, you're right. It's like when the housing market is weak for the everyday person. Yeah, that's not good news. But for the cash rich person who's in a position to buy more houses, game on. You're getting to buy the product that you want for less. And so you're right. Maybe it's not a matter of these brands, Panerai or Zenith. It's not a matter of these brands dying. It's a matter of these brands changing hands, or maybe it's a matter of brands like Bremon, rather than them dying, they then get bought up. I don't know how Bremon would work if it could be bought up, because there's so little single ownership of Bremon now. But yeah, this could be the time that the conglomerates just increase their portfolio of brands that they have.
Yeah. So I've been thinking a lot about one of my favorite shows ever made, a little show called Downton Abbey. So Downton Abbey begins, the very first episode begins with the Titanic sinking, and the whole show really goes throughout a huge economic change, and it ends up with, the almost Britain as it is now, with the working class having a far greater share of the world and of money, land ownership, etc., etc. And the whole show is really about how, well, not really about this, but a big theme of the show is how the aristocracy has to adapt with the changing times, or they're gone, or they're obliterated. Yellowstone's actually kind of about this too, if anyone watches Yellowstone. And I wonder if this is a similar thing happening right now, if they have to read the room and what's about to happen, because it will affect sales in the US, no matter what way we slice and dice it, which is an incredibly strong market, and how they're going to have to adapt and pivot. And there's going to be a few different strategies that are utilized. So we've seen the Christopher Ward strategy, which is just, I'm sorry, you're going to have to pay for this because their margins just aren't high enough to absorb that. Or if brands will somehow find a way to split the cost. I wonder what the strategies will be.
Well, the problem is that these brands have already done the strategy of sucking it up, because this is the second round of tariffs that Trump has done. The first round, I think, was perhaps 10% or 15%. And then initially it was going to be a 32% tariff or something like that, but it was delayed for 90 days. And then he just came up with this 39% tariff, and bosh, it was put into place pretty much immediately. And so Christopher Ward were already covering the tariff, that 10% tariff. They said,
I see.
we're going to absorb this. The US customers aren't going to have to worry about it. Rolex and I think Omega and the Swatch Group brands, the brand absorbed some of it, the importer absorbed some of it, and then the retailer absorbed some of it. So actually, although it was a 10% price increase, the end result to the customer was going to be something like a 1 or 2% price increase. It was a minimal.
Yeah.
So the brands have already done as much sucking up as they can. It's now just going to be an outright price hike for we shouldn't get political, but it's just a more expensive product now without any improvement in quality. It is just $5 to £1,000 price increase for nothing.
Yeah, and we won't get political once again, but I feel like Switzerland is out here catching strays. Like, I feel like this was never about Switzerland. This was never meant to be about it. Like a lot of these protectionist policies, trade policies, they started shortly after, around the time of the economic collapse of 2008, and seeing the rise of China and all these other things. And it's so much bigger than cars that were made in Detroit are now made overseas. It's microchips. It's like it's really big things that the future hinges upon. And I just don't feel like Switzerland was meant to be caught in this crossfire, and yet they have been, and they have received a really harsh tariff. This whole thing's really strange to me because, and like you said, it's just recovering some money because they're in a deficit, because tariffs are really meant to protect domestic products. Switzerland isn't taking away the US watchmakers, or it didn't take away a thriving industry that was there and then got transplanted to Switzerland for cheaper labor. That that never happened. It just feels like they're catching strays, and I don't see how anyone's better off for it other than
Yeah.
Trump, like you've said. But I'm trying not to get political either because I just don't know enough either. Like, as a Canadian, I'm not always the most informed on US specific US-ness, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
So interestingly, so IWC was created by a guy from,
It's an American, isn't it?
yeah,
Yes.
an American, either Mississippi or was it Boston? I have a big steamboat in my head. And I think the big Boston steamboat, I can't remember. Anyway, it was an American who wanted to have watches made for the American market, but having them made in America was expensive. So he went to Switzerland because that was where cheap labor was. And so that's kind of that whole thing around that Chinese watches are bad. No, it's just cheaper. It's cheaper to make stuff in China. It was the same process with Switzerland. watches were made in Switzerland because there was cheap labor. They had farmers who were sitting around not doing much. You had all these workforces that you could utilize. And I feel like this is just the world. The different areas have different things to offer. And it just happened that Switzerland had this process of having cheap labor. They managed to transition that into a massive industry, and now they're renowned for that industry by changing the branding of that. And China's possibly in that process now of changing the branding of, we make shit. Well, the fact that a lot of Swiss-made watches that people will spend thousands of pounds on, they're full of significant amounts of Chinese-made parts. Yeah, China's bad and Switzerland's great. So it's all bollocks.
I hope you enjoyed that half of an episode. If you want to watch the full episode, as I say, there'll be a link in the description down below. And you can check it out over on our Substack. It's just themovementpodcast.substack.com. I think that's everything. Take care.